This is Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella. Is the Obama presidency the most destructive administration our country has ever known? Our special guest says so. He's written a new book, Crimes Against Liberty, an indictment of President Barack Obama, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. David Limbaugh is a best-selling book author, a nationally syndicated columnist, a practicing lawyer, brother of radio talk show giant Rush Limbaugh, and a Newsmax contributor. Welcome to Newsmax TV, David.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What makes Obama the most destructive president in history, and what's the most destructive thing he's done?
Saying one answer for both questions. He's taking us over the financial cliff into bankruptcy within 2 terms, if he's reelected, God forbid. The national debt will double. Now, you consider the magnitude of that doubling. That means equaling all of the previous spending before him. He will equal it, and the deficit will be, he will triple it by 2020 at that rate of spending, even though he'll be out of office. And there's no end in sight with his multi-trillion dollars deficits as far as the eye can see. But he's also injecting this metastatic cancer known as Obamacare into the system. He's trying to increase taxes across the board, even considering a VAT tax, the cap and trade. I mean, he is putting such a burden on the free market system and the private sector that it will not be sustainable. And I don't think that our kids will enjoy the same kind of America, the freest, most prosperous, most secure nation in the history of the world, if his radical policies aren't radically reversed.
What is the overall message you're trying to communicate with your book?
That Obama is on a destructive path, and that I detail it in almost 400 pages of text and substantiate it in 100 pages of footnotes across the board. How I go into his personality traits, his narcissism, his conceit, his arrogance, his lying, his bullying, and how those personality traits combine with his extreme leftist ideology to produce an irrepressible agenda that is destroying the country. So I'm trying to convince people that that's going on. I try to prove it. It's kind of a combat manual, as one radio host called it, for our troops, our grassroots people, to read, pick up, and take to their neighbors and explain to them why we need to replace Obama and the Democratic enablers in his congressional majorities. So it's a book that is to help inform, motivate, and energize our side. I have no illusions about persuading the other side. This is a worldview war. We just need to recognize we're in a war. We're way far and above in the majority. At least 2 times as many people identify as conservatives as liberals. And we need to quit acting like we're a sheepish, cowardly minority and fight back and take back this country for American ideals.
You make reference to a Gallup poll showing Obama to be the most polarizing first-year president in history. What does that say about Obama's campaign pledge to be a uniter, not a divider?
Well, it was all smoke and mirrors. I mean, even Jonathan Chait, who is one of the most liberal writers out there, who is notorious for having said, "I hate everything about Bush, even the way he walks," said that there is no conflict between Obama's appearance, self-presentation as a conciliator, and his extreme leftist agenda. View it as a means to an end. He was shocked that people were blinded to what Obama was really about. It's an Alinskyite strategy to present himself as bipartisan, as a conciliator, as ushering in a new kind of politics so that he can rope in voters and then rope in the Republican Party, such as he did with his health care summit. Come on in, I'm going to be bipartisan. Then when they come in, he rolls over them with his dogmatic, excessive, extremist agenda and makes them look like partisans for opposing him. So it shows that he's a fraud in the inducement. And I detail in Chapter 2, I set out exactly how he's not the man he claimed he was.
Increasingly, Democrats are saying that President Obama is failing to connect with the American voters. What is it about his character and personality that may be contributing to this problem?
He doesn't even try anymore to connect to the American vote. He is so out of touch. Did you see what he did this very week, or after his failed stimulus programs have manifested themselves in egregious unemployment numbers? He promised that if we passed the stimulus package, unemployment would cap out at 8%. It got over 10, and now it's been hovering at 9 to 10%, between 9 and 10% ever since. Instead of saying, I understand that my policies are not working, that Keynesian economics are failed theories, that they exacerbate rather than ameliorate the problem, and I'm going to move and I'm going to adjust my policies. He says, I'm going to do more. I'm going to propose a $50 billion infrastructure program for highways and bridges, and I'm going to stimulate this economy in a sustain. He doesn't even have a clue what he's talking about. He promised that the bulk of this money in the first stimulus package would be for infrastructure. He's on tape, and a competing conservative magazine, and I won't mention it since it's not fair on this interview, has a story out today reporting the scandal of the fact that only 7% of the money that he allocated to the stimulus went to infrastructure. The guy is a fraud, and he's up there even against advice. You can't do this. We are going bankrupt. And so he's spending this stimulus money that wouldn't be justified even if it didn't bankrupt us because it doesn't work, and yet it is bankrupting us. How can you not think that the guy's trying intentionally to take us over the cliff? I'm not saying he is. I think he's a combination of Mr. Magoo and Nikolai Machiavelli. I don't know what the guy is.
One of your chapters is entitled The Commissar. For anyone who might not know, that term generally refers to an official in any communist government in charge of political indoctrination and detecting political deviance. Do you see true parallels between Obama and a commissar, say, in the former Soviet Union? And if so, what are they?
I think he's a commissar to the extent that he took over the car companies, that he high-handedly, cavalierly fired the chief executive, that he then, and this is more egregious, he single-handedly engineered the restructuring of GM and Chrysler so to the disadvantage of secured creditors who are entitled to priority under the law. I don't think you need to be a lawyer, I am, but I don't think you need to be a lawyer to know that secured creditors have priority under the law vis-a-vis unsecured creditors, and yet he proposed that his union buddies, the unsecured creditors, be given 50 cents on the dollar on their claims, and the secured creditors be given 20%. And then when they wouldn't roll over to his egregious demands, he threatened to slander them and destroy their reputation in the paper. He's done all kinds of things. Look at what he did to Arizona Senator John Kyle, who wrote an innocuous letter suggesting that Obama withhold the remaining stimulus monies and put a freeze on them because the monies that had been spent heretofore had not stimulated anything, which was manifestly true. And in response, 4 cabinet secretaries of Obama fired off independent letters, as if they weren't conspiratorial, threatening to withhold Arizona's portion of the stimulus money. Now, if that doesn't make your blood boil, I don't know what does. Who does he think he is, acting like this is his money and that it can't be distributed to Arizona?
Yes, David, you mentioned Senator John Kyle. Obama, according to Kyle, also said to him that if he did secure the borders, as Kyle was imploring him to do, that would remove the incentive for Republicans to negotiate comprehensive immigration reform. What do you say to that?
I have that in my book as well. I have everything in my book, by the way. It's a comprehensive indictment of this guy. He actually said that. Kyle said, and why would he make this up? Obama told me face-to-face that he would not enforce the borders because it would disincentivize Republicans to go along with his comprehensive immigration reform plan, i.e. amnesty. And what is this about? Why would they be doing this? Why would the federal government be at war with Arizona over immigration when they're just trying to enforce the law and help the federal government enforce the law? It is explicitly not racial profiling. Chris Kobach, a law professor who specializes in immigration, wrote the law to pass constitutional muster, and Obama specifically says that it's racially profiling when he knows it isn't. Why would he be doing it if he didn't have some grudge against America, or even more cynically, if he wasn't trying to change the demographics so that all these illegals can come in and vote for Democrats eventually? I mean, what's this about? It makes no sense otherwise.
In your chapter, The Anti-American, you mentioned something Obama said at an April 2010 nuclear summit. He said this: "Whether we like it or not, we remain a dominant military superpower." What does that tell you about Obama, David?
See, I put that quote in there because I said it encapsulates Obama's view of America. He doesn't want America to be a sole superpower. He thinks we're too big for our britches, that we have consumed too much of the world's resources, that we're unnecessarily provocative, that we even contributed to bringing on 9/11. His pastor said it. He went to the church voluntarily. That we are recruiting terrorists by our enhanced interrogation techniques. He said that when asked whether he believes in American exceptionalism, he said dismissively, yeah, I believe in American exceptionalism like Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism or Brits believe in British exceptionalism. What kind of foreigner do we have in this office? I'm not talking the birther issue. I'm saying this attitude is of an alien, a guy who's not proud of this country, who goes around apologizing to the world for our dismissiveness and arrogance, and who says we have not comported ourselves like a good citizen. And he apologizes to how we've treated Muslims and provoked them. Well, excuse me, but maybe he missed the chapter of our liberating in history, liberating these peoples, and we defeat them in war. We not only do not subjugate them, we rebuild their societies with our trillions of dollars in a humane, compassionate way. So what is this grudge he has against America? He was raised to believe, his mother, by the way, was ashamed of she didn't want him to identify as an American. Frank Marshall Davis, his prime mentor, was a card-carrying communist who didn't have a good feeling about America. His stepfather, and then he goes to a church where Reverend Wright is saying, GD, this is a pastor, GD America from his very pulpit, and saying, we brought on 9/11, our chickens have come home to roost. He supports the Palestinians, and his wife says America's downright mean. She's never been proud of it until he came into office. He runs around with Jerry Ayers, and by the way, Bill Ayers, and he did run around with Bill Ayers, notwithstanding his deceit about that. And then the real nub of it, I want to fundamentally change America. How many people do you know love something when they want to fundamentally change it? I don't want to fundamentally change it. I want to restore it to its fundamentals.
All right, David, and finally you mentioned Obama overruling the will of Congress on money to the International Monetary Fund for wealth redistribution. Please reiterate what he did for those who may have forgotten it.
Obama allocated or pledged $140 billion to the International Monetary Fund for redistribution to third world countries. He had no executive authority to do it. In fact, Congress expressly forbid him from doing it, and he said, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm exercising my power as commander-in-chief under foreign policy. But the thing is, this wasn't foreign policy. It was glorified foreign aid. Literally, redistribution of 14% of $1 trillion to third world nations when we don't have that kind of money for ourselves. It's just like he allocated money to Greece to bail them out when we're bankrupt ourselves, allocated money to the IMF to third world countries when we are literally bankrupt. And he did it against the will of Congress and against his express constitutional authority. I don't know that this guy recognizes any restraints on his constitutional authority, even when his own Democratic Congress doesn't want him to do it. This is a man who has this idea that he alone is vested and on a mission to change the country fundamentally. And as I said, I don't think anybody that wants to fundamentally change the country loves the country. We need to restore America to its founding principles.
Again, the title of the book, Crimes Against Liberty, an indictment of President Obama. Thank you, David Limbaugh. Congratulations on making tops on the New York Times bestseller list, and good luck with that book.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.